Oh, and as far as coming to the bar is concerned, through the Crown Solicitor's Office, I've been briefing Doug McGregor, and then when Selborne Chambers was vacated, there were a lot of empty rooms over there, and one of them was owned by Ken Asprey, who later became Justice Ken Asprey of the Court of Appeal over here. And I was friendly with Murray Wilcox in those days. We were both starting off, and so I went over to see him with Murray, and we asked him, could we have his room till the building was knocked down? And that got us both out of these floating situations. So he very kindly said he would. Although Ken Asprey had the largest library in the bar, and so Murray and I were sitting at these desks, surrounded by all these empty bookshelves, which used to puzzle the clients when they came, the few clients. Clive Evatt, Dr. Evatt's brother, by that stage had moved into his Dr. Evatt's old chambers in Denman, which was right opposite us. And he was a sort of, had a tremendous sense of humour, had a sort of bit of playful wickedness about him. And if ever a client was sitting outside my door, which was quite opposite the door that he came out of, he'd say, hey, are you waiting for me? They'd say, no, I'm waiting for Mr. Carruthers. This would be a public solicitor tenancy dispute. And then he'd give them a great long harangue about how on earth did you ever manage to get him to appear for you? Do you know he's the busiest barrister in Finland? I could hear it all through the door. So then in would come the client. But when they looked around at all these empty bookshelves, they'd look a bit mystified. But anyhow, somehow we sorted it all out.
Can I ask you, I just wanted to backtrack to a couple of interesting points you were making before our interview. You were saying when you came to the bar you were floating, and you used that description, meaning that you had to, in a sense, be loaned a little desk and a table and a chair in the corner of someone's room, and you would go between one floor and another floor. You really had no permanent room of your own for the first number of years.
No, well, that's true. And in fact, I don't know what the situation is, but this was on the 5th floor, Wentworth. Doug McGregor and Michael Manifold Helsham, who had the opposite room, also owned a 3rd room. So they owned 3 rooms between them. And they let me and another barrister use this room, the spare room, unless they wanted it when we just floated out. So we floated around and their clerk used us. But it was very common in those days that you didn't have a room, but kind-hearted juniors mainly, well, invariably, would allow you to use their room when they weren't there. Well, that's indicative, of course, of the generosity of the bar in those days, and the understanding that accommodation was frightfully difficult. Well, then, so anyhow, when Denman Chambers was in a state of emptiness, waiting for the demolishers to come along, Murray Wilcox and I used Asprey's room, which was wonderfully kind of him, and he never charged us a cent for us. Tremendous generosity. Well, then, of course, when Selborne was finished, the great struggle then was to get a room in Selborne, because there were about 4 barristers wanting every room, and we didn't have much seniority. Well, it was a difficult time, and I wasn't senior enough to be allocated a room you had to buy them, of course. This was the first time barristers' rooms had ever been available for purchase. That started with the Wentworth Chambers, of course. So what to do? We put our names down, but we weren't allocated a room. But a barrister called Bernie Kelly didn't want his room for some reason at that time. So he said, you can occupy this room, which was on the 5th floor of Selborne. And the Bar Council said, all right, well, we'll let you do that, but you have to share it with someone. So then I invited Wilcox to come over and share it with me. So we ended up in this room on the 5th floor of Selborne. And then eventually I got a room of my own when John Williams, who left the floor to go to what was then called the Workers' Compensation Commission, now the Workers' Compensation Court, and I had a room of my own. I used to come in there and sit in there on a Sunday just to think, this is my room. This was before I was married, of course.